Lady Bird is a decent, enjoyable enough movie, and that's just about all I have to say about that. The rest of this video will be me going into detail as to exactly why it is a decent, enjoyable enough movie. It's not terribly unique, which isn't a bad thing, but it makes it hard to form an interesting or in-depth discussion around. Quite obvious is the influence that Greta Gerwig drew from her own life to tell this story, though it does very little to spice up the narrative. It is the driving force behind the decision to make this film a period piece being set in the earliest parts of the 21st century. However, the effect this has on the social climate of the film or the plot in general is more or less null. This could have easily taken place in the modern day, or even a decade prior to the setting. It's not once obnoxious about its setting though, never does it go, "Oh hey guys, look at us, it's 2002. Remember this cool neat thing from 2002? Man, only the real 2002ers are gonna remember this one, yeah!" So I have no issue with the time frame. It remains a non-essential quirk. I must say that Saoirse Ronan and Laurie Metcalf both give quite standout performances. The rest of the cast is completely serviceable, they do their jobs well enough, and comedic delivery amongst the cast is pretty uniformly perfect. The writing is pretty conventional for the style of coming-of-age indie comedy, but it works in its own right. All of the plots are scatterbrainedly juggled in a way that feels natural and not muddled, though how some of them end up being resolved feels quite forced in a way that does not contribute to any characterization or theme. It's consistently funny, and the many flirtations with cliché dispersed throughout are often done with a unique spin that keeps them from being wholly predictable or groan-inducing. The same cannot always be said with individual lines of dialogue, however. Several times it feels like Gerwig is ripping lines straight out of her middle school poetry journal, and there's a certain negatively John Green quality to a couple others. These are rare issues. Most of the dialogue is convincing and or witty and or better, but they do leave a notable blemish on what are otherwise solid character interactions. Gerwig is perfectly competent as director. Nothing about how she approaches the craft is terribly challenging or distinguished, but she gets the job done. She directs her cast really nicely though. I had a few gripes with the editing. Several montages are put together quite sloppily. John Prine's score is really nice and sweet, and the overall use of music is always appropriate to the setting, tone, and period, without, once again, being annoying or unlikable about it. I like Lady Bird fine. Others in certain demographics will probably like it a lot more. If you recently have or are soon to become a legal adult, it's an experience you'll likely sympathize with, and if you're just a big fan of similar movies, there's not a doubt in my mind you'll have a great time. But for me at least, Lady Bird is a 6 out of 10.